Okay, shalom. Right, wonderful lesson. This lesson, it's called The Two Shall Become One. Subduing Lilith, this phenomenal force that is to be found in all the main religions, the Abrahamic religions, and also it would appear it predates it, although we're not going to go into that depth within this lesson. We are ever going to briefly touch upon a concept that's associated with Lilith. They get the names of angels that protect against her forces, called Senoy, Sansenoy and Semangelof, and we're going to look at that, the history of the incantations that are involved, these angels' names, as protection against Lilith, especially protection against newborn mothers and newborn babies. We'll just look at it in more detail and see how that is linked to the verse in the Torah, talking about the two shall become one flesh. Okay, let's just move on, and as we do, we'll bring that in. Okay, so we were looking at the last lesson at this particular verse. Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and cleave to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. So that's from Genesis 2:24. I did a wonderful lesson last lesson, some really major concepts regarding the whole what Vilna Gaon said regarding one of the aspects of Mashiach ben Yosef. It's really good to suggest you go and look at it. However, in this lesson we're going to be touching on some really wonderful concepts that we need to have an understanding of, because when we look at it we can learn something really profound and powerful from it. We can learn, oh, this is what people have done throughout history for a long time, however successfully. And we're at a different stage of maturation. We're at a completely different level of awareness and consciousness, and technology has advanced humanity to a different level that requires us to reassess where we were at back then, way back when, and how applicable to us now is it, and what can we learn to help us to mature and get to the next lesson, and maybe put some things in place that are much more successful at dealing with the reality that we are facing as a humanity, rather than relying on what they did when they were totally disempowered and totally uneducated and totally isolated as a community in the world. And I'm talking about like the Jewish people going into all the places in the world during this 2,000 years of exile, and having to have remedies to sort that problem out, and spiritual remedies to sort the problem out that they were facing. Okay, so there's a lot to think about. Right, let's go see how this is then connected, how this verse is connected to what we're just talking about, bearing in mind that this is talking about essentially Adam and Eve, and this phrase is talking about Bnei Yisrael in union with each other. There are different laws for Noachides when it comes to union and unity of man and wife. Okay, so just bear that in mind as well, and I'm not going to go over that in this lesson. Right, so this is part of the verse. And cleave to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. So Genesis 2:24. It comes to a regular of 1,393. We're going to have a look at that number now, because that's related to this whole concept of Lilith and these three angels. 178 ordinal, and then together they come to 1,571. But first of all, let's just dive right in and get this issue that I've been talking about addressed first. So we've got this statement from Ecclesiastes 12:12. You'll see how it's all linked out very soon, bearing in mind the 1,393 that we were talking about. It says, and more than they, my son, beware, making many books has no end, and studying much is a weariness of the flesh. Okay, bearing in mind that's the same word as used for the two to become one flesh. Okay, there is a connection just there. However, it's a numerical connection that we're looking at in this instance. And studying much is a weariness of the flesh. So we can see how that is connected back to what we were just looking about, and cleave to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. And sometimes we can fall. There's different ways, isn't there? There's different understanding that concept of flesh, because even the good news is called basaroth tovoth. It's related to the word basar, flesh. And you've got the whole concept of Yaakov being the soul and Esau being the body or the flesh, the basar. And we're in a state of exile. And that means that our flesh is incited greatly because of the different forces that we are facing during this exile. And we are facing a spirit of impurity. We know this because we are told in the actual Tanakh and through prophecy that Yod-Heh-Wah, we will remove the spirit of impurity. Okay, so, and the main and most significant spirit of impurity is obviously death, but there's all different variations of impurity. And we are all contaminated and we are all battling those forces of impurity. It's simply the consequence of us being in an exile that Yod-Heh-Wah we desired for us to be in. In this exile, however, our flesh starts to dominate. And that's why we need something like the concept of the good news, the gospel, basaroth tovoth, something good for the flesh. Why? Because when you are told the truth, your flesh calms down. The anger calms down. The good news that we are able to receive regarding what Yod-Heh-Wah has done to bring us out of exile and into a place of redemption, to bring us that we're far into a place where we're near to that that's good and far from that that's evil. This is good news for our flesh, because when we were far away, we were suffering. We were suffering untold depths of suffering, and we needed a release and a salvation from it. It's good news for our flesh. Do you know why? Because it's our flesh that truly, truly suffers. It's all the anxiety and the depression and the anger and the frustration and the sense of worthlessness. These are all things your flesh actually feels. The truth sets you free from all that. The truth of the good news. So that again is a connection. And so you've got the man and the wife becoming one flesh. This is a big remedy. This is a big remedy for a lot of the problems that we face in this world. Two people as one have got a lot more power to overcome those forces of negativity and forces of impurity than anyone has on their own. Likewise, a sense of community and family. The more extended that community and support network, the better it is. So there's connections there. It says, and studying much is a weariness of the flesh. So, okay, what can we learn from that then? Studying some is very useful, as long as you're putting that into practice. Okay, if you're just studying for the sake of studying, it's just going to weary your flesh. It's going to weaken your flesh. But that sometimes there's a positive in that as well, isn't there? You can interpret it one way or another. You can interpret that as a positive, or you can interpret it as a negative. Sometimes you can get caught up in a cycle of endless study, and if you're not really applying that to your life, it's going to have a negative aspect to it. However, a certain amount of study and a certain amount of wisdom and a certain amount of knowledge, as long as it's all in balance and as long as you are practically applying that, is going to be good for your flesh also. It's going to empower your soul to overcome your flesh. So weakening your flesh by empowering your soul over it is not such a negative thing. Okay? But in this context, within Ecclesiastes, it's seen as quite a negative thing, and it's wholly opposite what we've just talked about. It's just better for a man to cling to his wife and become one flesh than to rely exclusively on studying and making many books which have no end. There's a certain amount of vanity and emptiness with that. And if you go and read Ecclesiastes 12, it'll talk about vanity of vanities. So there's a great amount of productivity and healthiness and goodness for your flesh in the whole in the whole union of a man with his wife. Okay, so that's something that we've got to learn. And studying is just no it's no comparison to that goodness that can be attained through that true union. It's a simple matter of fact, and it's reflected in these verses. So this would be the equivalent of an unholy opposite to what is really good for a man. It's like it says, it's not good for man to be alone. And there's reasons why. Okay, because we've all got to face great adversity in life, and we've got to be all equipped to face that with things that are really going to help. So 1393, exactly the same as and cleave to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. It's 7 times 199. This is why we're going to be touching on this whole concept of Lilith right now, because we've got these 3 angels, and we're going to have to go and have a look on the internet to have a look at a really quite interesting article. I'm not going to go through all of it, but there is a very ancient history regarding these names and overcoming forces that bring disunity between a man and his wife. So there's very powerful forces in this world, real things that we have to face as being part of a humanity in exile, real impurity, real impurity that we face on a daily basis, that union between a man and a wife is under constant challenge and battle and test. It's really difficult for that union to stay intact because of these adverse forces of impurity that everybody in a marriage will face at some point. This is an ancient remedy for that problem, but like I say, I'm going to bring it into this century and how we can deal with it today in a better way, in a more messianic and mature way, in a way that reflects the advancement of humanity and that we've the progress that we've made in dealing with the reality of human life in this real world in which we live. Okay, so just offer some balance. Let's have a look what we have been doing, and let's have a look at what we can be doing. Bearing in mind, we're talking about things and forces that come between the union of a man and his wife. Okay, and all the good that is for in this world. Right, so I've got to go and have a look at an article. The reason why it's connected here, because the 1393, which is a man shall cleave to his wife and the two shall become one flesh, is 7 times 199. And the ordinal for these 3 angels is 199. So there's the connection. And it's very obvious to us that why these would be connected to that whole union between a man and his wife. Okay, right, so this is an absolutely brilliant article. I have read other articles when I first studied this topic. It's something that I studied quite. I'm very interested in the whole concept of Lilith. Why am I interested in Lilith? Because she is the unrectified female aspect of creation, if you like. She's the unrectified feminine force at work within creation, and there's a massive connection between her and Mashiach ben Dawid, who is seen as the rectified female divine, the rectified kingdom, the rectified kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. And he comes in at the level of Chaya. His soul level is at the level of Chaya, which is the same as rectified Eve, the same name as rectified Eve. She's called Chaya, which means the mother of all living. So you've got to understand, okay, if we want to usher in the final redemption, we're going to have to go and have a look at where we get that from, because we don't get nothing handed to us on a plate. What we get in this world is the opposite, and we've got to transform the opposite into the thing that we seek and desire, the lie into the truth, the concealment into the revelation, the evil into the good. So we've got this great force of evil and impurity, and somehow we've got to transform that from what it is to something else, what we desire, what we truly, truly desire. Okay, so we've got Lilith to deal with then. That's the reality that we are facing as a humanity, and this has been reality since the fall of Adam from Gan Eden. And until we grasp this whole darkness and transform it into the light that's hidden within it, we are going to be stuck battling these forces ineffectively, and usually they win. You can tell because of the world in which we live is full of the consequences of allowing these impure spirits in between a man and his wife, and then being very successful in the destruction and damage and havoc that they wreak. Okay, we need a remedy. This is one remedy, but I don't know whether this is not a successful remedy. I'm going to tell you straight off. It's not a remedy that's required at the level of when you're talking about entering into the redemption. This is where we was at. This is a remedy whilst we were stuck, trapped in exile with no way out. We wanting the way out. We're going to have to come up with something better than this. However, let's go and have a look, because from this we learn. We learn how, when we think about it and we think, this is what they were doing, right? What are our options that we've got available then? Because this didn't look like it worked. Because we've got 2,000 years where it's been going from impurity to impurity, and the damage that these forces have been doing has been increasing exponentially, you would think. So maybe these ways of dealing with it are not as successful, or certainly not successful enough for what we need today. Okay, I'm going to just stress that, because we got to start to think maturely. We can't think like kids anymore, and we can't have magic tricks to solve our problems. We've got to get our hands dirty with this reality and sort it out effectively in ways that work permanently. Okay. The truth is something that exists in permanence. It's not like a temporary fix. It's not like a sticky band-aid. It's an actual remedy that works, and it is a permanent change for good. That's what we really need to look at. So we've got to look at what we've had in the past and how this has affected it, and the results and the consequences of that, and learn from it. That's what I'm really trying to drive home. Right, so these are, who are you, Senoy, Sansenoy and Semangelof? Who are you? You're not really essentially meant to pronounce those names. I've pronounced them because I'm teaching them. You're not supposed to pronounce any of the names that are not common names. So you can pronounce Michael, it's a common name. Michael, Gabriel, and all the main angels, the main archangels, you can pronounce them because they are common names. But these are not so common, so we're not supposed to pronounce them. I pronounce everything on my teachings because you're allowed to when it comes to teaching. Okay, so that's just something to bear in mind. So this is an amulet that contains these names. That's to protect the relationship of a man and his wife from the negative forces of Lilith. And it tells you up here, Adam wa Chava, that means Adam and Eve, and then Chutz Lilith, outside Lilith, like we've got a union here, get her outside. And the angels that are chanted in order to protect that union are these three angels, Senoy, Sansenoy and Semangelof. Okay, and you get in all the amulets, you've got these similar looking creatures or whatever they are. They look like cockerels or something odd that I don't really know what they represent. Okay, but it's a very common image within these particular amulets. You get these three kind of images, whatever they are supposed to represent, I actually don't know. But that's a basic structure for the amulet. And then you've got things like this. This is another amulet that's been found. And these amulets go back a long way. There's evidence even in the 1st century of these names being employed in amulets or incantation bowls. Okay, and they've been found. The incantation bowls were all throughout Iran and Iraq. When the children of Israel went into Babylon, they were using these bowls all the time. They're in nearly every Jewish household that you find. Okay, so they were very, very common amulets used to protect against the force of Lilith. She was obviously seen as a very powerful influence and a destructive force when it came to marriage and when it came to newborn children. Okay, so on this amulet you've got a few interesting things. You know, you've got the Magen David, this shield of David or the Star of David. You've got the Anabakoach, so Anabakoach Gedulat Yimin Chateri Tzurora, and etc. etc. A very powerful Kabbalistic song to be found in the Siddur. Okay, called the Anabakoach because it starts with those the letters of the alphabet, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, etc. And it's called the Anabakoach. If you look it up, there's some really beautiful songs that go through it, and it's seen as a very protective chant, if you like. Okay, and it's within the actual Siddur, the prayer book, and it's said at numerous occasions during the prayers. Okay, then you've got this phenomena, which is another powerful phenomena. It's the name Yod-He Waw-He, and it's intertwined with the name Adonai, and that is seen as a very powerful amulet. And together those names come to 91. 91 is like the Psalm 91 is a very powerful psalm of protection as well. So the Adonai comes to 65, and the Yod-He Waw-He comes to 26, and this is seen as union between heaven and earth as well. Heaven is represented by the name Yod-He Waw-He, earth is represented by the name Adonai. Okay, so all kinds of things. And there's obviously some angel names here. I can't really pronounce them, but I don't know whether it's a Chad or Bad. It looks like Bad Patiel and Pad Ha'el. Okay, something like that, but there's no there's vowel pointings there but none there. And then again we've got the same thing, Adam wa Chava chutz Lilith. So Adam and Chava together outside Lilith, and then you've got the names of the angels above. These are the images as well that you find a lot on these amulets. I don't know what they mean, but these images are very prevalent in these amulets. And then we've got these cockerels or whatever these are. I don't know whether this represents the feminine aspect and this the masculine aspect. It looks like that's something to do with the feminine and that's something to do with the masculine, but I don't know. It's just from looking at the images, and you know, this looks a little bit like female aspect or some kind of symbolism of the female anatomy, perhaps. I don't know. And this looks like might be symbol of a male anatomy. I don't know. I couldn't tell you for definite. I haven't been able to find anything about that out. And then there's other incantations here, and obviously some kind of I haven't read it all, you know, but some kind of forms of protection, words used to protect. Exactly the same formula here. Adam wa Chava chutz Lilith outside, you know, not part of this union, in other words. She's seen as a very destructive force, and you can understand the cockerels or whatever birds these are, and then the three angels, represented by the three angels. And then we've got an image here of the Garden of Eden, Adam wa Chava chutz Lilith, so exactly the same terminology. And then you've got the three angels, and then you've got the name Shaddai, as in El Shaddai, God Almighty. And then you've got this word here, which means to rend, or rent or rend, you know, to tear away Satan. Okay, so Satan is seen as Lilith's husband, or Samael is seen as Lilith's husband. Okay, so together they're very destructive force. So I presume they're trying to rend the power of Satan from this particular union between Adam and Eve. And here we've got the Gan Eden image of Adam and Eve, you know, the tree of the knowledge, all the animals, and then the serpent wrapped around the tree of knowledge, and that's from 1700. So it's been used for a long time. Again, another exactly the same lizchor, to remember Adam and Eve, Lilith out, and angels' names, and then different angels' names this way. This one, Shamariel, it must be something to do with guarding, because Shoma Shabbat is to guard the Shabbat, you know, very, very diligently guard it. And then this is the name of another angel. And then you've got Yod-Heh, Waw-Heh, Star of David, and then the name Shaddai, which is seen as a very protective name, because on every single mezuzah, on every door, in every house, the name Shaddai is written. Okay. Again, same formulas. So we know that this has been over time very extensively used. Same images again. So this is and then incantation balls. And this is written in Aramaic. This is very ancient, by the way. And it says, all these names are mentioned in this medieval book called Ben Sirach. I think that's where it comes from, the stories of Ben Sirach. Or this is it, the alphabet of Ben Sirach. The three angels were made popular by the alphabet of Ben Sirach. So it came from there, while the illustration of their images in various amulets also contributed to their fame. And then it goes and tells you about, if you want to read it. It says, Eli Yassif, who studied the medieval stories of Ben Sirach or Ben Sirach, claimed that the custom of writing amulets and the names of the angels dated back even earlier than 8th century. Its story intended to explain an existing custom. The same goes for the story of Lilith as the first woman and her escape from Adam. It seems these tales were known even before they appeared in the stories of Ben Sirach. So Lilith is supposed to be Adam's first wife, because in the creation account there's two stories of Eve being created. Okay, there's, you know, man was formed from the dust, and then and this includes man and woman, and the man and woman that were formed from the dust are Adam and Lilith, or Eve in a fallen state. And then it tells you about Adam falling asleep, and then the woman coming out of the side, and her name being Chava, Eve. Okay, so she's formed a different way than the original woman that was formed from the dust. It's all coded messages, okay? It's not to be taken literally at all. The only way we can understand what is written in the Torah is if we are in possession of the inner secret meaning of the Torah, which is a revelation of Mashiach ben Yosef. Mashiach ben Yosef is I'll talk about it a lot, but one of the aspects is, you know, gathering in the lost house of Israel from all the places of exile to which they've been exiled. Okay, so we have been exiled in levels of impurity that are unimaginable. And somehow we've got to return from that place of exile to a place of redemption. We've got to go through a healing process. We have been subject to all these evil forces whilst we have been in Egypt, in Roman exile. The depravity and impurity that humanity has faced, including the lost house of Israel, including the lost house of Yosef, the levels of depravity to which we've been subject from, we need to be returned from. That's Mashiach ben Yosef, the power within us to return the lost house of Yosef. It's not enough to be saved and still remain in our place of impurity and exile. It's not enough to be saved and still remain in the damaged, broken state that this impurity has inflicted on us. Okay? We've got to do something about it. We've got to empower ourselves. We can't just put a sticky band-aid on and think that we are fully, completely healed persons, because we've got a work to do in reality to transform it from the darkness it is into the light. We've got to create a dwelling place on earth as it is in heaven, and we are the ones that are doing that. We're the ones left with the work to do that. Okay, so you know, I think I've gone a little bit off track with that, but anyway, let me just have a look, see if we can come back on track. So we're in a process of rectifying. We're up against these really negative forces. It was the will of Yod Yahweh. Why? Because we've got to remember who we are. You know, it's easy to be defined by the filth and depravity of this world. It's easy to be defined by the experiences we've all experienced. Okay? It's easy to say that's all we are. We're not. It's hard to reveal within us the truth that we are made in the image of Yod Yahweh when we are in such depths of exile, and these forces, like Lilith and Samael, have the upper hand over us. Okay, so we've got to put ourselves in a place, effectively remove us from that place where we have forgotten who we are, and who are we in that place? Well, we sort of a lot like Lilith and Samael. You know, it would appear we're doing and thinking and speaking a lot along the lines of what perhaps Lilith and Samael might be thinking, saying and doing. We're not acting much like a rectified Adam and Chava, but we've got a work to do to get us to that place, because we're not Samael and we're not Lilith. We are made in the image of Yod Yahweh. Okay, so we've got to remember this. So there's all kinds of, it's a massive ancient concept. Humanity has been battling these forces and trying to subdue them for a very, very long time, and it's been running away from the responsibility. You know, you can't run away from Lilith, because Lilith contains the light hidden in her that will become Mashiach ben Dawid. You just have to be brave to see it and accept it and do something about it. There's no running away. There's no sticky bandages. There's no magical amulets, by the way, to deal with this. This is a truth. Do you know what? There is hard work, blood, sweat and tears, determination. What can we really do to overcome the problems humanity is facing with these forces like Lilith and Samael? Destructive spiritual forces that sodomize children, paedophilia we're talking about, adultery, you know, the depravity and sexual perversion that is prevalent in this world, the pornography, the sex trade, the child trafficking, all the drugs even involved. There's lots of perversions, there's lots of tests and temptations. The real, we all have to face them. We've all got to have an effective solution for them. You got to ask if chanting the names of angels is going to work. It didn't much. You've just got to face the reality in a very mature way, you know, in a very realistic way. And that is partly the work of Mashiach ben Yosef in our lives. Returning the house of Israel back to a place of purity. From exile into redemption. Exile into what? Well, all this filth and depravity for a start. That would be good if we could wash these filthy rags down, you know, that we've been wearing, and get to a place where we're actually pure. But these are real forces. And we've got to also understand, just like anything negative, applied correctly as a very positive. If you take something that could be destructive and negative, but employ that in a healthy, good way, like I talked about anger last lesson, you can be angry about the right things and make the necessary change that needs to occur in this world to set us free from slavery to redemption. You can use anger. We should be angry at the way these evil shepherds are governing humanity at this time and taking full advantage of vulnerable people. Anger can help if it's channeled right and if it's used appropriately and not in ways that are violent and bring about more darkness into the world, but actually can be used effectively to change situations for good. So all these energies have a potential that can be used for good. As much as they can destroy a union between a man and a wife, you harness these energies in the right way, they're going to bring a big unity between that man and a wife. You just have to channel it in the right way. You've got to, because there's nothing wrong with sex at the end of the day. It's depraved sex that something's wrong with it. So I got a lot of inspiration actually off this rabbi called Rabbi Shmuley Batayach. I don't like everything he does, and but anyway, he's got these two books. I read them a long time ago, a lot of years ago. One called Kosher Sex and one called Kosher Adultery. So he's basically taking our animalistic drive, if you like, but bringing it into, he's making it kosher, so that you can enjoy all the sexual freedom that you desire within your own marriage. And healthy attitude towards our human desires, our human sexual desires, instead of keeping it all hidden and we're all holier than thou. It just brings it out into the open. He's very realistic about it, but he comes up with effective, cautious solutions. The guy's happily married. He's honestly, the man looks like he's got a very healthy aspect to that side of his life. He's done something about it, and his daughters have gone on and done like kosher sex shops for even like married couples, to enjoy whatever pleasures they desire to give to one another. What I'm saying is, you can take something that could be potentially extremely destructive. These forces can be extremely destructive when they are unchecked and when they are not dealt with properly. But you can take that force, that powerful force, and inject it into your marriage and bring yourselves a lot of pleasure, and and you can increase that union between man and a wife. It doesn't necessarily need to be a destructive force. You can be you can employ it very wisely for your advantage. Okay. We are dealing with, that's in terms of between a man and a wife. There's obviously some things that are very perverse, like sodomy and one thing and another. It's hard to say that nowadays, because we're living in a certain climate, we're living in a certain culture. These are real. In Torah, it's wrong. Okay, from a Torah perspective, things like sodomy is wrong. Okay, is there a way, that you could employ that kind of impulse for good? Okay, this even rises in bestiality and certainly paedophilia. Something's got to happen. Some smart people have got to come along to recognise the problems humanity is facing and come up with a solution better than burying our heads in the sand, not daring to talk about it openly, and having basically no effective solution to the problems that we are all facing and all suffering as a consequence. Who's sorting out the problem of paedophilia in this world when you've got a president that is committing paedophilia in front of the whole world and everybody's silent? You've got to understand the level of depravity that we're in. He's molesting children in the White House, and he's been molesting women for a long time, publicly in full view, and nobody has brought that man to account for his perversion. Okay, nobody ever has brought that man to account. Why are we living in a world where this goes on? Why is this happening? It's incredible. The level of brazenness that's shoving it all in our faces. When it's been shoved in our faces to such a degree, we know for definite that Yod Heh Wawi is slapping our faces with it, expecting us to do better than this. Okay, there's lots that can be done. You can be dealing with it psychologically. There's problems, there's sexual problems that need to simply be addressed. If a man is doing that in the circumstances that he is doing it, in a place of power, because these weirdos and perverts will push themselves into a place where they are able to do it. This is the thing with paedophiles, even subconsciously. They know that they've got this problem. They don't deal with it. But what they do subconsciously is put themselves in places where they're going to be able to exploit the vulnerable. These are wicked forces, by the way. These are uncontrolled forces, and these are forces that are getting employed for evil, not good. in an unholy way, not a holy way, in an impure way, not a pure way. But things can change because of the reasons what I've just said. There's no force in this world that cannot be subdued to the side of holy for good. There's nothing. There's no level of evil that cannot be transformed into an equivalent good. Okay, so we've got to be wising up to this reality and doing something about it. And we're living in a situation now, for example, where the victim has become the perpetrator and the perpetrator is the victim. This is all messed up. You know, you can see this from that Me Too movement, where people literally didn't want to hear the truth about the extent of this problem. Then they just blame the victims, and then then the victims become all almost like perpetrators themselves. It goes on. We're not dealing with it very well, are we? We've not come up with an effective remedy for these problems, for these normal, natural problems, for this exile that we've been exiled into. They're a part of the problems humanity's facing. We should be dealing with them more effectively. And I could go on and on and on about this matter. It's we're just not coming up with effective strategies. They had a strategy going back to the first century for dealing with this problem. The problem's been known about a long time. Chanting 3 angels' names is not going to resolve the problem, by the way. It's when we recognise our own power. It's when we recognise that we have got the ability to transform this negative into good. If we've been victims of this negativity, we have to rebuild, like what I said last lesson, when we were doing the lessons on A Shield for You. You have to take the damage that's been done in your life and repair. Because that's the way forward. That's the whole point of this exile, is to repair and rebuild. Then when you get to a strong place, you're not just going to be repairing and rebuilding, you're going to be advancing in enemy territory and taking back what belongs to the realm of holy from the realm of unholy itself. Okay, so all these things you got to understand. We need to get to ourselves where we're mature enough and powerful enough, and we are like those good shepherds who are able to handle the reality, the wolves and everything like that, and do something about it that's really going to change. And you know, I always encourage people, wherever you're at, whatever problem you've got, go get help for it. Don't hide it. Don't run from this shadow that is part of who you are. Take the shadow and transform it into light. And the only way that you are going to do that is by dealing with the reality of the portion of evil that you have within your hand to deal with. So I don't have, I've never had certain problems like what men face, paedophilia, but I've suffered from paedophiles. Okay, and I've had to repair the damage that they've caused. If you've got tendencies like that, you're going to have to get it dealt with. You know, and I'm sorry that we live in a world where society doesn't deal with these things effectively. Going back to that, what we're saying about Biden, this is unbelievable, by the way. A couple of years ago, my mum was telling me about this particular head teacher. He was a phenomenal head teacher. He was on the actual social services, panel for assessing child abuse. He was he's respected. You can't even believe it. He was so respected. He was so trusted. He was in everything. He couldn't have got higher in people's estimations. He was a paedophile. He was caught, videoing children in toilets. The guy was, I couldn't believe it myself. My mum's telling me, I'm saying, just wait a minute, wait until it all comes out. You just can't believe what people say. It came out and he was. And you're thinking, the guy manipulated everybody. The guy manipulated nobody escaped his delusion that he'd created. And yet what he'd done, like Biden, you put yourself in a situation where you can get away with it. Like, he's now president. Who's going to challenge the president of America? But this is exactly what paedophiles do. They subconsciously put themselves in a place where they can do what it is that this seedy, dark impurity that's a part of their life. They subconsciously putting themselves around children, winning trust from parents. They're doing it even at the subconscious level, because at one level they're disgusted about the behaviour, but then on another level, because they haven't checked in and got that sorted out, it's driving them forward to commit whatever perversion and crimes that they're committing. So the guy ended up, he must have been having a relationship with a 15-year-old kid, and it all came out via that, and then they took his laptops away and all these images were there. The guy had conned everybody. He'd lived a complete delusion to satisfy this one perverse thing that he had about him. Do you know, the reality was he was a wonderful, wonderful man in so many ways. If he'd have dealt with this reality effectively, you know, I don't know, it's sad to me that this is the way that it operates. This is the level of delusion that is even sitting on child panels, you know, social service child panels that have to intervene in severe cases of child abuse and coming up with solutions to these families' problems and what action the government's going to take regarding protecting these children. The guy was up there and he was a paedophile. And you just think to yourself, what are we dealing with here? What level of impurity are we dealing with? What level of delusion are we dealing with? Everybody without question was deluded with that man. He had the power to delude us all. He simply had a problem. He should have sorted it out. But he didn't. And he allowed that hidden secret shadow to drive him to do everything that he did, to manipulate his entire world. He's sat rotting in prison now. His entire life, he had a penthouse suite in this beautiful village. I used to live in the same village. I used to live there, and my children at one time went to that school that he then became headmaster of, not whilst he was a headmaster, I must admit. So these were all things. This is a tiny little village that my great-grandfather was from. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm just thinking to myself, he had everything, and now he's rotting in prison somewhere, and he'll never ever get his life back. You have an opportunity, you know. Think about what's driving you in your own life. Is it the shadow in control, or is it the soul that's made in the image of Yod-Heh-Wah-Weh? Because if it's not the soul made in the image of Yod-Heh-Wah-Weh, do something about it. Sort this shadow out. Confront it face to face and do something about it. We've all got a shadow. Some men have that. Somebody will have something else. It'll be a desire to commit adultery against the wife, or whatever, incest, bestiality. It's unbelievable. There was, not long back, there was these fellas, beautiful looking men, you know, filming themselves multiple times a day with animals. You're just thinking to yourself, what is that? I can't get over. This was in Scotland. I'm thinking, what are these beautiful farmers doing? And filming themselves and posting it to pervs that want to watch that. It's a reality we have to deal with. You know, if you're getting, you've got to confront this reality and deal with it. And for those people that don't want to confront that reality, that want to subject themselves to it, then you just have to you have to have some pretty severe consequences for those people. And this is a little bit of wisdom that I want to share with you, because this will help a lot of people. We've all got impulses to do wrong. We all have major impulses to do wrong. We've all got the potential to do wrong. Okay, and as far as I've been able to understand over time, when it comes to these impure spirits like Lilith and Samael, there's three aspects to it that you've got to be very aware of. Three aspects to it that you've got to be very aware of when you're dealing with the reality of being a human in this world, filled with all manner of inspiration and all levels of opportunity that are available to all of us. We can all sit on our computers and watch porn all day, every day. You know, if we wanted to, if we're inclined that way, and some do. Okay, right, so remedy. You've got to think about these three things, because it empowers you. Knowledge is power. And knowing that you can do something about your problems and facing your shadow is good. It's beneficial, and you see that negative energy can be turned around to an absolute positive in your life. And the whole purpose of our suffering in exile is to do such a thing through the power of Mashiach ben Yosef. We need to return to our true selves, not these shadow selves. Okay, so for 3 things, you've got to first have an inclination. Not everybody's got an inclination for the same sin. We've possibly got a potential if we incite it enough, but we've not all got we've not all got the potential. Okay, you're going to be aware of your own inclinations towards whatever evil you are inclined towards, sexually or whatever else. Thieves, liars, gamblers, what you name it, whatever your impulse is that's inclined to something wrong, you'll know about it. It might be drinking, it might be drugs, it might be smoking, it could be greedy or gluttony. You know, I've been guilty of that myself. Laziness, you know, any manner of evil, but it can all be transformed for good. So you've got to have the inclination. Then you've got to have what's called inhibition. I think that's the right word. Let me get this right. You know, something that'll inhibit you from doing it. Sometimes it's the Torah. The Torah is the greatest form of, it should inhibit us from doing evil. It's not always successful, but it should inhibit it. It's what's called God-fearing. We fear God, we fear the consequences of doing wrong against God's Torah. So we've got God-fearing or inhibition, something to stop us. Wow, if I did that to a kid, I could end up rotting in prison myself. And guess what happens when you do that to kids and get into prison? You're a target for something you might not desire. It's a reality. Okay? So you've got that. You might just, I don't want my mum to find out. Anything that's going to inhibit you is powerful. It should stop you. The Torah should stop you, ideally, from doing it. Reading the Torah daily has got a power, because you're reading what's right and what's wrong, and you're constantly empowering your soul with the truth. Okay, so this in itself is very powerful and effective. And psychologically, it's powerful and effective. So inhibition, fear of God, or any inhibition whatsoever. And then you've got to have opportunity. Right, like I said, the guy's Biden putting himself in a place of power, so he's got the opportunity, and nobody's going to put him in prison for it, by the looks of it. And like this teacher, this head teacher, is creating the opportunity, and this is what a lot of paedophiles or sexual predators do. They create the opportunity. Suddenly they start running, because they know there's lots of single women or lone women running, so they'll go running past. They'll create that opportunity to commit and perpetrate the evil that they're inclined towards. But like I say, sometimes most of us are held back by inhibition, fear of God, fear of consequence, or some kind of something that will, as much as I'm inclined to that, forget it, because the consequences are too severe. You know, this can even be speeding along the road. I've got twice caught speeding. I'm not speeding now. It's like I once got caught using the phone in the car. It inhibits me from using it again. You know, because it's now 6 points on your licence. So they've made it so that it's not desirable to want to use your phone, because the consequences are so bad. And I live in an area where all my fines, I've been driving all my life, and all my fines have been in this area. You know, I've been caught 3 times in the same area. It's unbelievable. It's only a tiny part of the UK, but 3 times I've been caught here. And it's not like I've spent all my driving time here at all. It just so happens they must be very sharp to pick me out here. So there's inhibition, right? You've got to understand, sometimes we can do things to lower our inhibition, like take alcohol. So you just got to be aware of this, or drugs. Or, you know, you have an argument with somebody and you feel really, really crap. You feel so bad about yourself that you actually go out and do something bad because you're feeling bad. It lowers your inhibitions, it lowers your normal levels of integrity, especially if somebody's making you feel bad about yourself or you are becoming self-conscious. It can drive you towards doing behaviour that's not as good as what you normally would be if you felt good about yourself psychologically up as opposed to psychologically down. So all kinds of tricks you've got to be aware of. When it comes to empowering yourself to overcome these problems that we all face for real, you've got to have a real solution. It's like with the Jewish people where they guard the eyes, so the Hasidic people and dressing modestly and getting used to like things like family purity. There's all kinds of things that we can do to prevent that negative energy and shadow side of us from dominating, and we should invest in it. You know, everybody knows their own problems, and you got to seek out solutions that are effective to that. This is not going to be effective chanting 3 names. I don't believe it is, because I'm looking back over the history of 2,000 years and I'm thinking, well, it's gone from bad to worse, and this has been going. You can see you can trace it, and you think, well, they were writing it in Babylon, you know, and now there's evidence of it in 1700s. Just wait a minute, did it work? I doubt it. Magic doesn't work. You've got to understand, magic doesn't work. What works is hard work to resolve problems over time. You know, dealing with the reality is what works. Bringing it out into the open and confronting it. Obviously, when you're dealing with some problems like sexual problems, especially paedophilia, you can't go waving a flag. We've got to be realistic. We're living in a world where vigilantes can literally take you out of this world. So you've got to understand. You've got to be wise when you're dealing with these sexual problems. You can't go talking to your friends about it necessarily. You know, they might just you just could become somebody that they gossiped about. You got to think smart. You've got to think really smart and pray about it really hard and come up with solutions to problems that you think you're happy with. You know, and you've got to understand there's always got to be a lot of confidentiality when you're dealing with matters. You don't need to go blowing the trumpets on the hills if you've got a problem. You just go get professional help that are paid to keep your business confidential. And it's their duty to keep your business confidential. Okay, so there's all kinds of things like that you've got to take into consideration. We all facing these things. How we are going to move from, how are we going to develop from the state that we're in now, total depravity, and to a place of complete purity. It says in the Bible, your day while we will remove the spirit of impurity, and we do wait that day, but we've got to do everything that we can below. We can't just wait for the magic wand to wave. We've got to be seen to be doing that Yodeh Wawi desires. He desires the spirit of impurity to be removed. Is there anything that we can do to hasten that? Because we will all benefit from it. Okay, so it's just about being mature. This chanting angel names is really immature. It's when you're in a place where you've no other options. You know, it's like you look at, I was recently looking at, I'm just going on about this a little bit because I know some people will benefit from this wisdom because it's simple wisdom, but it's very effective. I was listening to these witches from Romania, very, very wealthy, the world's richest witches in Romania. People from America phoning him up, paying thousands of pounds for him to stir cat mess in a pot. So, I mean, it's just unbelievable. They pick flowers at the equinoxes and the solstices and put it in with the cat poo and sit in there stirring all the curses into. I'm thinking, people are paying for this. And it just about sums it up. You know, like when the Jews were in exile into foreign lands and they were surrounded and disempowered completely. They had absolutely no say in governments. They weren't empowered in any way. So in situations where you are totally disempowered and people didn't speak about the reality of the problems, like sexual problems, but it's all kept quiet. So what do you do when you're not confronting the reality that humans are facing? You start to come up with solutions to the problem that don't actually work. Let's just chant some angel names then. Let's just, stir a pot of can't mess up and flowers that were picked on summer solstice. Yeah, that'll work. Not. But this is the mentality when you're not in a place of empowerment. This is how you think when you are totally disempowered, when you are oppressed. You think like that. You're looking for band-aids over gangrenous wounds. You are not dealing with reality, you are masking it. Or you're trying to manipulate the forces that you have actually no control over because you're too intimidated by the reality. But this is where humanity's been. We haven't been able to deal with much, but we're now getting to a stage because the whole communications are opening up, technological advancements are opening up, psychological advancements are opening up. People are talking about reality more than ever before. We're getting exposed to it, even through social media. We're starting to think, oh, that's happening to them. People are opening their mouth and speaking about real things that are affecting them. Artists are creating songs. People are doing movies. And we're starting to wake up and realise, we are human and we are all suffering in some ways. And, we're starting to connect to that reality. People didn't talk about this previously. So they come up with solutions like this. And it's no different from these witches that I saw in Romania. And we're watching them and we're thinking, the Romani people, the gypsies, they've no political standing. They're just as like the Jews would have been exiled into a foreign land. Their only tiny little community with their own tiny little, very, close-knit communities with their own little rituals that they do. So what do they have to do in that situation? Magic. They've got to chant stuff to feel empowered because they have no real power. And they're so isolated in their own little communities with their own little, small-mindedness, if you like, that's the solution to every problem. We'll just chant something, we'll just some magic trick, we'll just pick flowers on this particular day and mix it in with somebody, a bit of hair, a bit of bone, a bit of cat poo, whatever you can get hold of. It's ridiculous, but people really believe in it. And the best thing, they can get other people to be intimidated and frightened as if they've got some real power. And I saw these people wherever they were at, I think it was Romania, like the Romanian government frightened to put these witches into prison and one thing and another. I'm thinking, they have managed to gain some power through this total and utter delusion. And then one politician came along, he obviously is not standing anywhere, he's putting the witches in prison, and I'm thinking good for him, because that's exactly what I'd do if they were as criminal as that. They were not paying taxes and one thing and another. Get them, round them up, get them in prison, show them that you're not frightened of their nonsense at all. And I was really glad that some politicians came along and did that and put them into prison. They were just making a lot of money. I'm talking about a lot of money, defrauding people, using witchcraft and all this nonsense. Is basically defrauding vulnerable people, but plenty of them doing it and not paying any tax. They got into trouble. It was just one of them things. It made me laugh. But what I'm saying is that what's the difference between that and this? No difference in my eyes. We have got to be like Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh. We're made in the image of Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, who's the King over kings of kings. We're children of the King. We shouldn't be picking flowers on a certain day, and we shouldn't be writing. Look at that. I mean, these are ridiculous images. It's surely not me, just me, that sees that these are ridiculous. I wouldn't be relying on this for anything. I wouldn't be relying on this for my marriage. I wouldn't think, all right then, I've just wrote this, everything's going to be hunky-dory, because do you know what? That stupidity is going to come back and bite you. That's what I'll be thinking. I will be looking for signs there's problems in my relationship. I would be talking about them talking about real life, and we're coming up with strategies like, I don't think we should probably watch films like that are so sexually explicit, unless we're, you know, I would be, you've got to be wise, you've got to confront that reality, and you've got to apply effective strategies like modesty and one thing and another. Right, I feel like I'm going on a little bit too much about these, but I just wanted to drill home this point. It's no good relying on magic. You know, even praying to a certain degree is only part of the work. It's a preliminary connection. It's getting you conscious of the problem. Please, God, help me to overcome this. Guess what? Once you pray, you do everything you can below to accomplish that you've prayed for. Don't expect a magic wand to be waved, because I'm telling you now, it won't be. If you have got something you can do to sort your problems out, he's waiting for you to do that, because then he knows that you will feel that you've done something positive on your behalf to get the reward that is due somebody who deals with reality as effectively as they possibly can. Okay? And it's our work to do this. It's our work to transform all this negativity into positivity. All this separation and, you know, all the filth that's gotten in and creates problems. We've simply got to deal with it. And this is not an effective way to deal with it at all. You can believe it, you can do it, but it might not work. It'll come back to bite you. It'll just simply come back to bite you. Do everything you can to resolve the problems you face in your world, and you transform the world for all of us. What we do in our little lives impacts the entire world in which we live. Okay, one small way in which we overcome one aspect of evil in our lives, the victory is for the whole of humanity, not just for ourselves. Okay. Right, so now I'm going to fire through these really quickly, because that was basically the entire message. And I hope you can appreciate how not dealing with that can bring problems, marital problems, and dealing with it can bring a great deal of marital success. Okay. Right, so 199 is Malachim, kings, the ordinal and the regular and the ordinal. Moshe, spelled out this way, the ordinal 81. Yeshua, spelled out this way, the ordinal 118, added together 199. Okay, you're going to have to make your connections yourself, because I'm going to go through this quickly. I didn't want this lesson to go on as long as what I did. And with great mercy we will gather you. So this is talking about it, isn't it? Gather us from where? Gather us from all the filthy, depraved, exiled places where we've been scattered to. Okay, with great mercy. Remember that word, mercy. Whenever you're dealing with this reality, be merciful above anything else. Merciful, kind and gracious. You get out that rod of judgment, you're going to be beating yourself up with that. You've got to be kind to yourself if you're suffering some problem like this. You've got to be compassionate upon yourself. It's hard enough being in a place where we're overcome by the shadow of our own self. You know, it's hard enough to be subject to forces of impurity without having to beat ourselves up about it. God placed us there only for an ultimate good, to transform that place of impurity into a place of purity. With great mercy I will gather you. Okay, and that's related to Mashiach ben Yosef. Also, this 771 is related to this. I've done that in previous lessons, but I can't go through that now. So 199 related all to it. And Israel loved Yosef more than all of his sons. Why? Because Yosef is that force within this exile, getting us from that place of impurity to purity. It's as simple as that. It's the whole work of Mashiach ben Yosef to gather in the exiles, to rebuild Jerusalem, city of holiness, city of purity. Okay, where the temple is built, and we'll finally, through the building of the holy temple and all the mystical ways in which that can be interpreted, the temple of our own bodies, for example, will be pure. You know, we'll finally have the ashes of the red heifer, no more spirit of death and things like that. We'll be able to be cleansed from it, and the whole world will benefit from it. It's all glorious stuff. 1,990, so 10 times 199, related back to this. And Israel loved Joseph more than all of his sons, because you know what? He was doing the work in exile, just as Joseph was doing the work in exile in Egypt. Mashiach ben Yosef is doing the work with us and through us and for us in this exile to accomplish everything that I've been talking about and more beside. And they heard the voice of God. Okay? And they heard the voice of God. We've all got to hear that voice, haven't we? We've all got to hear that inner voice speak to us. You know, go forward, advance, advance, advance. Don't retreat ever. Don't let your knees caffle under you. Just pick yourself up and go forward. Go from the place where you are today to a better place tomorrow, even if it's just mentally at first, and then verbally, and then physically through actions. It doesn't matter. All these things need to work together. Just make it, I am going to overcome this shadow. Be honest. Confess to yourself what your problems are. And then through that, hear, you know, and they heard the voice, the voice of the Lord God. Pretty sure that that's them in the Garden of Eden after they'd just eaten the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You know, then they've heard the voice of the Lord God, haven't they? So we're all that, you know, we all commit error, but then it's for us to hear the voice of God and do something about it, isn't it? So 199. There we go. Buried in Shechem, so this is Joseph himself. This is the power that we need to connect to. Whilst we're in exile, suffering, Mashiach ben Yosef is buried in Shechem. Okay, so he was exiled, but the bones of Joseph came out of Egypt with Moshe, and came throughout all the desert experience, and then were finally buried in Shechem. Okay, and that's a lesson of encouragement to us also. We don't belong in exile, basically. We don't belong in exile. Make a provision for yourself to, recognise at least you don't belong there. Joseph recognised he didn't belong in that exile. He made a provision, and that provision was what helped the children of Israel themselves go from a place of exile into redemption. The power that was in his bones caused the sea to split. Okay, to get from exile into redemption, we've got to cling to that reality, and we've also got to cling to the truth. You know, O Joseph Chai, and everything, and dwell on and meditate on it yourself. There's lots in there, and there is nothing new under the sun. This is talking about Metatron. Metatron's a necessary evil. Do you know why? When Metatron's in charge, you know, when we're still dealing with the problems ineffectively, and we still got the shadow looming over us that are still not resolved, and we're still wallowing in all the impurity of this world, and we haven't got no power to overcome it, Metatron's in charge. It's when we raise up that power of Mashiach ben Yosef, and we go from metatronic states of consciousness where we're looking for something up there to take care of us, some intermediary we've got to cling to. We've got to understand that the power of Mashiach ben Yosef is within us, and it's working under the sun, not over it. Metatron is, there's nothing new under the sun. He's all above the sun. It tells you in the Zohar, many places it'll talk about this whole concept of Metatron being above the sun. Guess who's under the sun? Mashiach. Where is he? Down here in the dirt, sorting all our problems out with us and for us. The spark of Mashiach is within us. Mashiach ben Yosef is within us. Moshe is within us. Mashiach ben Dawid is within us. We've got to illuminate this reality. Live it, breathe it, speak it, do it every day. And stop relying on something that's up there to come down or wave a magic wand. It's not going to happen. That is not redemptive states of consciousness. It's childish, immature, magic incantation mentality. It's not going to solve the problems that are under the sun. The problems we face are under the sun, not over it. We need to be down here, feet on the floor, sorting it out. Terra firma, sorting it out. Simple as that. We've a work to do under the sun. We've got to toil and make a dwelling place for Yod He Wahweh to dwell with us under the sun, on earth as it is in heaven. Okay, and then this is a few verses. 1990. Kindness and truth have met. Righteousness and peace have kissed. I await this day. We all do. We all do. We all know we do. Right, through the flax and the barley have been broken, for the barley is in ear and the flax is in the stalk. Okay, so this is, I analysed this based on it containing the word aviv, because it's very important to understand truth, like the truth that sprouts from the ground. And it's to do with the barley harvest and the wheat harvest. The barley harvest is really synonymous with the revelation of Mashiach ben Yosef. The wheat harvest is synonymous with the revelation of Mashiach ben David. Where are they? Where do they grow? They grow under the sun. That's the Mashiach level. The truth sprouts from the ground. Everything in this creation that is under the sun, it's pointing to concepts concerning the Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David. And it can all be traced back to the barley cycle and the wheat cycle. Okay, so this is what happened to the barley and the flax or whatever whilst they were in Egypt. But there is some connection to the whole cycle and understanding the Torah and understanding the timing of Hashem, understanding the holy days and the holy festivals, and clinging to that that's holy and true and rejecting that that's not. I looked at this because of the whole concept of the solar calendars, but I'm not going to go into that now because I need to get through this lesson. Okay. The truth sprouts from the ground. It's written in Psalms, this. The truth sprouts from the ground, from the earth. It's right here in this world, waiting for us to harvest it, waiting for us to do the work below, like tilling the fields so that you can plant the barley in the first place, so that you've got a crop that you can actually harvest. Okay, like I said, the barley represents Mashiach ben Yosef. It's all the work we do to transform, the things I've been talking about, from evil into good. And likewise the wheat harvest that comes after. I can't really explain myself in full with that. If you go and have a look at some of the things that I've done on calendars and Mashiach ben Yosef and Pesach, it'll go over verses like this. It's written, there's some wonderful stuff in that as well, understanding that. And truth sprouts from the ground. I did. It's the one where you've got your 5 grains of barley. I'll try and put it in the description. I can't go through it, but it's connected to all this somehow, because it's for the reasons why I said we've got a work to do. We've got to transform the delusion and the lie into truth. We've got to toil to do that, just as we've toiled to bring forth the barley and the wheat. It doesn't just happen. For with you is the source of life, in your light we see light. So this is an extremely powerful messianic verse. It's related to the concept of Yosef, Mashiach ben Yosef, because the 1266 is connected to the 2 words that he said when he was in prison before he got out. Remember me to Pharaoh and take me out of here. However, we've also got this connection through the Mispah Gadol to all these what we're saying. But if we take the Mispah Gadol and the Mispah Gadol ordinal, add them together, come to 3088, which is 2 times 1544. That number we came across the last lesson, that is the same as Chokhmat Sofrin Tisrach. The wisdom of the sages will stink. Did that last lesson. That comes to 8 times 386. 386 is Yeshua. Okay. He is the light in which we see the light of the name Yoteh-Waweh. The Lord said to Moses, do not fear him, for I have delivered him, his people and the land into your hand. You shall do to him as you did to Sihon, the king of the Amorites, who dwells in Heshbon. Okay. So the Mispah Gadol, the regular and the ordinal, come to 9,154, which is 46 times 199, all connected. Okay, we want all these enemies, don't we? We want to have them delivered. All these giants of our, these giants, they do feel like giants. They're so intimidating, though, aren't they, when we're dealing with reality? It's not nice. You really want to just bury your head in the sand. You don't want to come up with effective solutions, because it's a lot like hard work, and you do feel intimidated, as if there might as well be giants. They do feel like giants in your mind until you start to deal with it effectively, and then you just realise, actually, I could crush this under my foot. But you got to go through these initial stages. It's a bit like that phrase, turn and face the devil and he shall run, and he does. Because, you know, it's like stand up against a bully. The bully will not be anywhere to be found. And we've got to sort of employ this wisdom when we're dealing with our problems. They feel like giants, but we have got some assurance. You know, we cling to the name of Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh, we're going to succeed. Always. We will never fail. Right, let's go and have a look at this then. So I'm going to really run through this very quickly now. Okay, so we've now had a look at this one number. Let's just go finish off and see what we can do. So, and he came between the camp of Egypt and the camp of Israel. So this is Metatron. This is the angel of the Lord. That is Metatron. Okay, so this is wholly opposite this. When we finally reach that stage where the man and their wife can cleave together and one become flesh, and they've none of this impurity and depravity separating them, and none of these stupid impulses that we would call Lilith and Samael that are destructive. Everything's been brought for a holy and good purpose. That we won't need the intermediary that's the angel of the Lord. We will be at the level of the Mashiach himself consciously. That doesn't mean to say that we are Mashiach. No. We will have attained levels of consciousness that are equivalent to messianic ways of thinking, redemptive ways of thinking, rather than an angel that needs to separate us off from our, pursuers and offer us some protection whilst we behave ourselves under his guardianship, by the way. And if we're cast out of the clouds of glory, guess what? We'll be facing the backside of this angel that's a pillar of fire, and it will burn. We want to overcome that whole, states of immaturity where we're in between exile and redemption. No, we want to pass over into the promised land, and we want to defeat all the giants that are in the land and subdue it completely to the side of holy, enter into the entire holy land where there's only Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh and nothing else beside him. We're free to serve him without intimidation, without threat, without none of these enemies, and nothing coming between us. Okay, so it's a necessary evil, by the way, until we get there. We can't. There's no maturity without immaturity. There's no solution without the problem. Okay, so the problem is part of, and it's a necessary evil. There's the solution, then there's the outworking, and then there's the final. So there's a problem, then there's all the work involved in transforming that problem into a solution, coming up with an effective solution. Okay, and in the in-between stage, we're in the camp of Israel, and if we step outside that, i.e. we're drawn towards the problem and we enter back into exilic ways of thinking and exilic behaviours like what we did when we were in Egypt, well, we'll face that pillar of fire. That's what will happen until we're smart enough to put ourselves in the right place and to get through this whole, to see it through to the end, to not like the bad, spies report, oh no, the giants are too big in that land, let's just hide away in this desert. No, it is intimidating to face the reality. I mean, look at what we've got to face. It's a very intimidating thing, but we shouldn't be intimidated because Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh is for us. We've got the power of his name within us, driving us forward, and helping us to accomplish all this. Look at that, 178, Garden of Eden filled the Orden of it. So I don't really need to explain myself. The act of union, by the way, by some of the sages, I can't quote it and I can't give a source for it, but the act of union between a man and a wife is equivalent to being in the Garden of Eden. It's all good. Right, he is clean. This is what we want to attain, don't we? Mashiach ben Yosef, the leper king, has put himself in he's put himself with us in this depravity and impurity, and we have got to clean ourselves up and get to that stage of from this depraved, filthy, exilic state into a fully redeemed, fully returned, fully matured spiritual state, as children of the King. We've got to get from a place where we're wearing filthy rags to a place where he is clean. No more leprosy. You know, no more. We've cleaned ourselves up. Wonderful. Right, shout, O daughter of Jerusalem, 178. This is what we want, though, don't we? We want to be like daughters of the king in the holy city of Jerusalem, the city where it desires to put his name. Yes, we'll be there. Thank you very much. It sounds marvellous to me. Right, I dwelt among the tents of Kedar. This is, I can't really go into much detail about this, but this just goes to show we've got to unite all the Abrahamic faiths together in order to reveal Mashiach ben Dawid. There's no other way except to unite Judaism, Christianity and Islam. There's no other way. You can go back and look why that is so on the previous teachings that I've done, anything to do with Islam, anything to do with Arabic letters and things like that. It's going to reveal a lot of truth regarding this matter, much more than I've got time to do in this. But this is code name for Mashiach ben Dawid is dwelling in the tents of Kedar, which are related to Muhammad and related to the whole Ishmaelite people, the whole Arab people and things like that. We have to unite. We have to unite. It's as simple as that. And this is basically King David telling us where he's dwelling. He's dwelling in the tents of Kedar, which is an Ishmaelite tribe. Okay, the Ishmaelites, the Arabs. So there's lots of mystical teachings in that. Basically, we've got to unite together, the Jews, the Christians and the Muslims. And, not saying that that's even easy in and of it. So we're talking about a union between a man and a wife, but when it comes to a union between, this is another man and a wife, by the way. And I did some teachings on the Aleph, Lamed, Mim, and basically... you'd have to go watch the videos, but the first instant, there's these mystical 3 levels in Islam found at the beginning of some of the some of the chapters within the Quran, and the letters are Aleph, what's called Alif, Lim, Min. I think that's what it is. I think I've said it wrong now, but the equivalent in Hebrew of Aleph, Lamed, Mem. Okay, they're just slightly different. I can't remember it now because it was quite a few weeks ago that I did it. But 3 Arabic letters that are equivalent to the Aleph, the Lamed, and the Mem. Okay, it's called slightly different names, right? And the first instance where you get those 3 letters that are 3 words in succession is talking about Adam having his rib removed and that becoming Eve. Okay, so we've got these 3 religions, and basically what they are is the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and they've got to unite. They're the name Yod He Waweh, and then the vessels of Shalom that Yod He Waweh desires to fill, and we are like an earthly version of what goes on in heaven, the actual union of the name Yod He Waweh. So down here on earth, what have we got to represent that's happening up in heaven, this incredible divine unity, the masculine and feminine? Well, we've got these 2 religions that are Yehuda and Yosef that needs to come together as one stick. They're the name Yod He Waweh, the united name of Yod He Waweh, and that's got to fill in the vessels of Shalom. Where do we get them from? Well, we get them from the Muslims that have been doing the work to build up the vessels of Shalom with the religion of Shalom. Okay, but it's all glorious. But then again, you've got this concept of the man and the wife coming together, the vessels and the light, Israel and the nations. It's all connected, and it's all utterly and absolutely, completely, totally glorious. So it does go beyond just an actual man and a wife. At the macrocosmic level, this is good. Microcosmic level, it's macrocosmic. It's the entire vessels and the lights coming together as one, and this is the end that Yod He Waweh has been preparing us all for. It's all glorious. So is my beloved among the daughters. Again, so this is Yod He Waweh and Israel, isn't it? 178 there. Says the Lord, thoughts of peace. So this is just taken a small excerpt from Jeremiah 28:11. Unity between a man and a wife is peace in the home. Okay, Shalom Bayit. So that's all connected to that. The whole concept of Shalom, The only vessel that can contain a blessing is a vessel of shalom. Where do we get the vessel of shalom from? We get the blessing of shalom through subduing our flesh, our outer nations, our Esav. Okay, that power of our flesh that is out of control, causing all these problems, we subdue that down to the side of holy. We bring peace for our body, and we bring peace for our soul, and that vessel of shalom then becomes the only vessel that can contain the blessing that Yahweh desires to bestow upon us. Okay, we have to subdue these forces down, as we will never have peace, we will never have blessing. It's as simple as that. Settled consciousness. So this kavua, settled consciousness, is a very, 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 very high level of consciousness. Okay, there's 32 levels of consciousness. This is one of the highest. I think it might be the fourth from the top. The top one, nobody can ever attain it, by the way, so you can tell how high it is. 178. So, I mean, and make your enemies a footstool at your feet, 178. That's exactly what we need, because these things that we're talking about are enemies. We need them to be under our feet, not above us. Not our problems mounting up above us, crushing us, making us feel small and oppressed. You know, when they're under our feet, if we put all our problems under our feet, we're going to be standing the height of a mountain. You know, if I think about all the problems, I've just put it in the right place. Don't have it above your head, crushing you and oppressing you. Get it under your feet. Get some authority in the matter. Know where it belongs for a start. Even psychologically, remove the garbage, you know, remove the fluff. Get it down where you are stood on it. Okay? You can only sort one problem out at a time. You can't sort every single problem out. You can't just have it like crazying around in your mind, sending you do lala. You just have to take a good deep breath in and think about what you can attain today and do that's at hand to do today. And then the rest of it, walk on it. Just stand on it. It's going to get you higher. Your problems are meant to be under your feet, not above your head. Let them be the tail, not the head. You've got to maintain your head in the matter. You have got to be the head of this problem. Let the problem be the tail. Let it be what you stand on to get yourself higher. Don't be under it. And I think with that, I will say shalom. Please subscribe and share, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you.